Pedro Porro, Williams, and thundered in for Spain by Ferran Torres!
When Spain appointed Luis de la Fuente as their manager in December of 2022, almost nobody was excited. Spain had just crashed out of the World Cup in Qatar, and many wanted a big-name replacement for Luis Enrique. Instead, Spanish Football Federation handed the job to a quiet coach who had never managed in the top flight of club football.
Bueno, pues nosotros creo que hemos demostrado que somos capaces de dominar esas situaciones de estrés máximo que se genera cuando además tienes una ventaja en el marcador y los rivales, lógicamente, tienen que ir a igualar esa desventaja. Pues nosotros mantuvimos el mismo criterio futbolístico, la misma idea. Teníamos el convencimiento de que nosotros seguíamos siendo muy peligrosos, tanto en el juego de control del juego.
To a lot of people, it felt like Spain had lowered their standards, but that's not what was happening at all. Behind the scenes, Spain had a much bigger plan. Over the next few years, the bald man with glasses would completely transform the national team. They won the Nations League in 2023, lifted Euro 2024, and then became world champions at the 2026 World Cup. So how did an uninspiring appointment turn into one of the smartest decisions the Spanish Football Federation has ever made? To understand why De La Fuente's Spain are so organized and adaptable today, you have to look back at his own playing career. The biggest influence came during the early 1980s, when he played under the legendary Javier Clemente at Athletic Bilbao. Clemente's teams were not known for flashy football. They were known for being tough to beat. They defended as a unit, worked harder than everyone else, and played with a direct physical style that frustrated opponents. De La Fuente was a key part of that team. He helped Athletic Bilbao win back-to-back La Liga titles in 1983 and 1984, before completing a famous domestic double by beating Barcelona in the Copa del Rey final. They were also awarded the Spanish Super Cup that same year, making it one of the greatest periods in the club's history. Playing in that environment taught De La Fuente lessons that still show up in his coaching today. While many Spanish teams became obsessed with beautiful passing football, he learned that winning also requires discipline, organization, hard work, and knowing when to be pragmatic. After a success at Athletic Club, De La Fuente joined Sevilla in 1987, where he spent 4 seasons playing mainly as a left back, although he could also fill in further up the pitch as a winger. He later returned to Athletic Club in 1991, where he briefly worked under Jupp Heynckes before finishing his career with Deportivo Alaves and retiring in 1994. By the time he hung up his boots, De La Fuente had played more than 250 La Liga matches. Those years gave him a deep understanding of defending, dressing room culture, and what it takes to compete at the highest level. Looking at the way his Spain team plays today, it's easy to see that many of those lessons stayed with him long after his playing career ended. Now, when De La Fuente retired as a player, he didn't just jump straight into one of Spain's biggest jobs. Instead, he worked his way up the hard way. He started coaching in the lower divisions with Portugalete before moving to Orelia Vitoria. In 2001, he joined Sevilla's academy, where he spent 4 years helping develop some of the biggest names Spanish football would produce, including Sergio Ramos, Jesus Navas, and the late Antonio Puerta. From there, he returned to Athletic Bilbao, coaching the club's youth teams before taking charge of Bilbao Athletic over 2 different spells. Not everything went perfectly. He had a short spell managing Deportivo Alaves, which ended up with him being sacked. It left him without work and forced him to rethink his future. Looking back, it probably was one of the most important moments of his career. It kept him humble and taught him resilience, qualities that would later define him as a manager. His big break came in 2013. The Spanish Football Federation was looking for youth coaches, and thanks to a recommendation from former Spanish manager Iñaki Saez, De La Fuente was given the under-19 job on a short-term contract. That decision ended up changing everything, because over the next decade, he became one of the most successful youth coaches in Spanish football. More importantly, he helped develop the very generation that would later become the backbone of the senior national team. He led Spain's under-19s to the European Championship in 2015, coached the under-18s to a gold medal at the Mediterranean Games, won the under-21 European Championship in 2019, and guided Spain to a silver medal at the Tokyo Olympics. Along the way, he worked closely with players like Rodri, Mikel Merino, Unai Simon, Dani Olmo, and Fabian Ruiz, years before they became stars for his senior team. That's a huge reason why his transition to the senior squad was so smooth. He already knew the players and they already knew exactly what he expected from them. Funny enough, De La Fuente wasn't just coaching on the training pitch, he was also teaching other coaches. Alongside his work with Spain's youth teams, he became a tactics instructor at the Spanish Football Federation's coaching school in Las Rozas, helping educate the next generation of managers. Here's another fun fact. One of the students sitting in his classroom was Lionel Scaloni, so long before the two would become World Cup winning managers, they were teacher and student. Now, teaching also changed De La Fuente himself. Early in his coaching career, his teams reflected the traditional Basque style that he grew up with: direct football, physical battles, and fighting for second balls. But spending years teaching tactics and studying different systems opened his mind. He started blending Spain's technical passing game with quicker attacks, faster transitions, and much more tactical flexibility. That evolution would eventually become the foundation of the Spain team that conquered Europe in 2024 before going on to become world champions in 2026. Now, when Luis de la Fuente took over Spain in late 2022, before all of this success, he didn't want to completely reinvent Spanish football. More so, he wanted to fix it. Because you see, under Luis Enrique, Spain still dominated possession, but it became slow, like watching paint dry. It was far too easy to defend against. The team would often complete hundreds of passes without creating any clear-cut chances. It was all foreplay, no penetration. De la Fuente kept the technical identity that Spain has always been known for, but he completely changed the speed and purpose of their football. The biggest difference was that Spain actually now looked to play forward whenever the opportunity was there. Instead of just endlessly passing sideways, defenders and Rodri constantly looked for line-breaking passes through the middle. As soon as they spot a gap, they'll fire the ball into the midfield, where players like Pedri, Fabian Ruiz, or Olmo were waiting between the opposition lines. These guys are incredibly comfortable at receiving the ball under pressure. One quick turn, and suddenly Spain are running straight at the opposition defense instead of recycling possession. The wingers are another huge reason why this system works. Unlike previous Spanish teams where wide players often drifted inside early, or they were just makeshift central midfielders, Nico Williams and Lamine Yamal stayed as wide as possible during the build-up because they were natural wingers that stretched the opposition across the entire pitch. As defenders are forced wider to deal with them, huge gaps start opening in the middle for Spain's midfielders to attack. It also creates exactly what Spain wants, which is lots of one-on-one situations. If Nico Williams or Lamine Yamal can isolate a fullback, Spain back themselves every single time. Both players have the pace and dribbling ability to beat defenders, create crosses, or cut inside and combine with their teammates. What makes it even harder to defend is all the movement around them. When a winger stays wide, midfielders like Pedri or Dani Olmo will often make underlapping runs into the space between the opposition's fullback and center back. If the winger dribbles inside, the fullbacks, whether it's Marco Correa or Pedro Porro, races around the outside to create a 2-on-1 overload. There's always someone moving, there's always another passing option. That constant rotation makes Spain incredibly difficult to defend because defenders are constantly deciding whether to follow runners or hold their position. Even the striker has a different job than people might expect. Whether it was Alvaro Morata or now Oyarzabal, the striker isn't just standing in the box waiting for crosses like CR7. They're actually going to be useful and drop into midfield or drag a center back out of position. As soon as the defender steps forward, space opens up behind the back line for Spain's wingers or midfielders to attack. It's a small movement, but it creates huge opportunities. Then here's another important part. Spain are just as impressive without the ball as they are with the ball. When these guys lose possession, they immediately try to win it back with an aggressive high press. The striker leads the press, forcing opponents towards the wing, where the rest of the team can trap them. Behind that press is Rodri, who acts as the team's safety net, cutting off passing lanes through the middle and stopping attacks and protecting the back four like a condom. If the first press doesn't work, Spain don't panic. They quickly drop into a compact defensive shape, closing off the middle of the pitch and forcing opponents to attack down the wings instead. It's one of the reasons they've become so difficult to beat. Now, the biggest proof that De La Fuente's ideas actually work came at the 2024 Euros. Spain were drawn into what many people called the group of death, alongside Croatia, Italy, and Albania. Spain came flying out of the blocks, beating Croatia 3-0 before completely outplaying the pasta-loving Italians in a 1-0 win. They then finished the group with another win over Albania to qualify with a perfect record. As the knockout stage began, Spain showed they could win games in different ways. After coming from behind to comfortably beat Georgia 4-1 in the round of 16, they faced the host Germany in one of the toughest matches of the tournament. Germany managed to slow down Spain's dangerous wingers, but De La Fuente adjusted brilliantly. Instead of relying only on Yamal and Nico Williams, he pushed Dani Carvajal and Marco Correa much higher up the pitch to provide some width. Alvaro Morata also dropped deeper to pull defenders out of position, creating space for runners from the midfield. The tactical switch worked perfectly, because deep into extra time, Mikel Merino arrived in the box to head home a dramatic winner in the 118th minute, sending Spain into the semifinals. Next came the Baguette Warriors, France. Didier Deschamps' side took an early lead, but Spain never panicked. They kept pressing, kept moving the ball quickly, and slowly took complete control of the match. Mbappe was kept quiet for long periods as Spain's midfield dominated possession. Yamal, of course, produced that unbelievable goal to equalize before Dani Olmo completed the comeback, giving Spain a deserved 2-1 win. That set up a final against England in Berlin, and once again Spain were the better team. They controlled possession without becoming predictable, defended with incredible discipline, and created the better chances. A 2-1 win secured Spain's 4th European Championship, a new tournament record. Spain carried that confidence straight into World Cup qualifying, cruising through their group with ease. They hammered Turkey 6-0 away from home, beat Bulgaria 4-0, and arrived at the 2026 World Cup as one of the betting favorites. Their World Cup, though, did not begin well. They were held to a frustrating 0-0 by what we later found out was a Cape Verde super team. Immediately, people started questioning whether the favorites had lost their spark. But Luis de la Fuente never panicked. He backed his players, trusted his system, and refused to change anything. It didn't take that long for the patience to pay off. Spain bounced back by bending Saudi Arabia over and putting 4 past them. Then they grinded out a tough 1-0 win over Uruguay to finish top of the group. From there, they looked unstoppable. Austria were swept aside 3-0 in the round of 32 before Spain knocked out Portugal 1-0 in a match that saw their defense completely shut down the likes of Cristiano Ronaldo and Bruno Fernandes. Though I don't know if that's the toughest job in the world. Belgium gave them a tougher test. Spain actually conceded their first and only goal of the tournament, but even then they stayed calm. They had controlled the game from start to finish and earned a deserved 2-1 win to reach the semifinals. Waiting for them, once again, was France. They were seen as the massive favorites, but Spain completely outplayed them. Their midfield controlled the game from start to finish, leaving Kylian the dictator Mbappe and the French attack with no room to play. Like Olise, Dembele, and Mbappe were scoring for fun, but they just couldn't compete because Spain's midfield dictated the tempo all night. Oyarzabal scored a penalty, and then Pedro Porro secured a comfortable 2-0 win, sending Spain to their first World Cup final since 2010. Now the final could not have been scripted any better. Forget the Yamal versus Messi storyline. This was also De La Fuente versus Scaloni. Now the question before the final was, how do you stop Lionel Messi? The man had 8 goals and 4 assists coming into the final. Well, it was simple. Spain defended collectively. Rodri, Fabian Ruiz, and the back line all worked together to close down passing lanes, limiting Messi's space and cutting him off from the rest of Argentina's attack. It worked perfectly. Spain controlled possession from the opening whistle. They created all the chances and forced Martinez to keep making save after save. Like the Argentinians were barely hanging on. Like these brothers didn't have a shot until extra time. Finally, in the 106th minute,
Pedro Porro, Williams, and thundered in for Spain by Ferran Torres! At last! At long last!
after wave of Spanish attacks, they got their reward. It was the moment that decided the World Cup. Spain held on to secure a historic 1-0 win, lifting their second World Cup and completing one of the greatest periods in the history of international football. In the space of just a few years, Luis de la Fuente had taken a team that many people had written off and turned them into the undisputed kings of world football. The biggest difference that Luis de la Fuente had made wasn't on the tactics board, it was in the dressing room. He had built his team around trust and relationships. Players often described him as more of a father figure than a traditional football manager. He was approachable, supportive, and made every player feel important. Whether they were starting every game or riding the bench, they still felt a part of the squad, and that created something special. Spain became a team with almost no egos. Players accepted their roles, subs stayed fully committed, and everyone bought into the same goal. His leadership was also especially important for the younger players. When Lamine Yamal exploded onto the global stage, everybody and their mother immediately started comparing him to the greats. That kind of pressure can crush a teenager. De La Fuente refused to let that happen. Instead of adding even more pressure, he constantly reminded everyone that Yamal was still just a young player learning his craft. His job, he said, wasn't to rush his development, but to protect him, guide him, and help him grow naturally. He took the same approach with Pau Cubarsí and the rest of Spain's young stars. So yes, he modernized Spain tactically. Yes, he won the Euros and the World Cup. But more than anything else, he built a culture where every player felt valued, every staff member felt appreciated, and the team always came before the individual. That's what turned a talented group of footballers into world champions. If you enjoyed this video, I'm sure you will love this one too. Check it out right here.